Hello, people, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are back with a new and exciting edition of Master Speak today. So, what's your plan for Friday evening? Sure, you're not stepping out, you're not even thinking of stepping out. So, let us know how do you plan to spend your Friday evening because you would have surely earned yourself some indulgence after this interesting session we have for you today. Now, I'm not sure how many of you attended Master Speak with David Acker a few weeks back. Our speaker today is someone who has co authored a book with David, and they share a fabulous rapport. Fun fact for our audience, they figured the brand architecture spectrum during a mountain bike ride they were doing together. That would have been an interesting bike ride, I'm sure. Now, I will soon get there with the introduction of our guest speaker today, but just quickly go through a housekeeping check. I hope and pray each one of you who are tuned in today are absolutely safe, your families are doing safe, and everybody is healthy. Please click the like button and let us know that everything is fine with you. Now, our guest speaker would like to know which city, which country you're joining us from. So, share that in the comment section and we will catch it from there. If you want somebody, your friends, your family, your colleagues to join the session with us, don't forget to tag them and invite them to join the session with you. Learning is always fun when we do it together. Lastly, a very important one, share your comments and ask your questions in the comment section. I'm going to filter through those questions and I'm going to post those questions to our guest speaker today. Not to forget, the two lucky questions, as always, will be picked up on random basis and will be declared the lucky winner for the show. But you've got to stay till the end of the show for you to know who the winner is. So make sure that there is an incentive for you to stay back and make sure that you keep your questions coming. Now we've run 24 sessions so far, on Master Speak platform, and all of them are gems. They offer us wisdom, perspective, guide us, and help us to emerge stronger from this unprecedented situation. Now things will come back to normal, but that normal will be a different one, as we know. Get to know more about that by visiting all the sessions or any of the sessions that you would like on our social pages. Now, coming to our guest speaker today, it's my pleasure. I'm delighted to introduce you to Eric, or I should say, Dr. Erich Joachimsthaler. I hope I got that pronunciation right, Eric. He's a delightful young man. He runs more miles in a day than we walk in a year. And I'm sure a lot of you would see that, the energy that you will see when he will speak. Now, Eric is a founder and chief executive officer of Vivaldi, a leading growth, a leading global growth strategy firm that answers the complex brand and transformation questions of today's businesses. He is an award-winning author of several books on brand strategy. Prior to founding Vivaldi, he was a postdoctoral fellow and professor at Harvard Business School. He is one of the most sought after keynote speakers at industry conferences and company meetings, and he's joining us today from New York City. And he has a very interesting topic for us today, how platform businesses drive new and shared value in growth in a world without walls. I can't wait to hear from Eric, and I'm sure the same is case with the audience. Eric, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Um, I'd like to first thank you so much for inviting me. I'm incredibly delighted to have you there. I got passionate over the years with this idea of an interaction field, that we all live in some form of connected world. That connect ever more connected. It doesn't matter whether you are in New Delhi or in Chennai or in Mumbai. You are connected in the as closely to me as I'm here from New York City to my friends and colleagues here. So I find this idea fascinating. And I find it fascinating because when you think of brands and businesses, it fundamentally changes how you build brands. And I want to pick up on those things that my colleagues before, such as David Archer, talked before. And I would like to begin there and continue that conversation and sort of not just talk about what we must do now, but where we go from here. How do we build businesses in the post-COVID world. How do we leverage this new connectivity around the world, and what is the implication for brands? I did, as Rakesh said, write many years, 25 years, books and articles at a Harvard Business Review, and also my first book here with David Archer, the brand leadership. I then wrote a book on innovation, how to really deeply understand consumers from the outside in, which is called Hidden in Plain Sight, which was published at Harvard. But my new book that gets me so excited is called In the Action Field, and how do you create not just value for customers, but shared value for everyone. I think this is what we must keep in mind as we build businesses in India and around the world. So I want to talk about this. Now, let me go back. It's always helpful to go back before you go forward in some ways and look forward. But when you think about brands and how we had built businesses in the past, back then in the 70s, businesses were very asset heavy. If you look at in terms of tangible versus the intangible asset value, the majority of the assets were tangible assets, and only very little, in this case you see here in the chart, 17% was intangible. And then something fundamentally happened in business. And that is that we slowly changed companies to become more and more intangible. The value creation was no longer intangible. And that was also the birth of branding. I started in the early 90s working with David Archer, actually just around 91 that time, where we said there's something fundamentally shifting from a company that is more built on tangible assets, factories, machines, and a company that is built more on intangible assets. And we must think of brand as a means to capture that intangible value. Because that intangible value will be more important. Brand is one way to capture that intangible value. If you look forward to today, that thing has changed. Now, 2020, that number here in terms of tangibles versus intangible is 8% right now. So that has created the brand revolution. And David Archer and I, in the year 2000, and again in 2009, published that book where we said, this is the revolution on branding, and this is why we need to take a very strategic perspective on branding. Branding is not just communications. Branding is about capturing the intangible asset value that companies are creating, and that intangible asset value has to do with the customer relationship. Now, if I may go, I now look at how branding evolved, and then I suggest where we are going from here. The first era, those in the 1970s, the era of logic, where basically the focus on branding was to identify a need and then to say, and to create awareness and some sort of an image. Charmin says, don't squeeze a Charmin. If you want a paper roll, then you say, okay, you don't want you want that paper roll to be soft. To illustrate softness, you create a slogan, don't squeeze the Charmin. American Express is about travel, global travel. People like to do that. The need here again is global travel, and you want to have a way to pay. Don't leave home without it, and so forth. Those were the era of needs. We call them in the US the madman world, the Don Draper, if you have that show in India world. And then things changed. Things went from the era of logic to the era of emotion. And we talked about emotionalizing the brand. And I remember walking in 1992 into Harley Davidson, and Harley Davidson suggested, how can we build a brand? And we suggested, how about creating a personality? And those Harley executives in Milwaukee said, wait a moment, what? A personality? We are a machine. We are a bike. We are a serious bike company. And we say, no, how about a personality? There was a bit out there at that time, but Harley obviously has done an enormously successful way to do that. Then after, I could go on emotion forever. There's so many. Coca-Cola says, we want the world to sing in harmony and so forth. I think those are really amazing things. Nike has built on the emotion of athleticism and fitness. Then comes the era of experience. The car companies is a good example. They said, so what is really, you're not just driving a car. You're driving the ultimate driving machine. It's a driving experience that you get with a BMW that you don't get with a Mercedes and BMW. So each of these eras have been there to find some new ways of differentiation, some new ways of connecting with consumers. It was easy in the era of logic, and then we said this no longer works. Quality no longer sells. We need to sell something else, emotion. And if emotion still works today, if that doesn't work, then it's the era of experience, trying to solve something in consumers' life. Now, I want to now step into the new world and want to suggest where we're going. What is the new principles of branding? And now you need to ask yourself, if back then in the 80s and 90s, the biggest change was from tangible to intangible assets, and the brand became a means to capture that intangible asset. What is it today? What is the single most important driver that changes the way we build brands, that changes the way we build businesses? I call them an interaction field business, a platform or digital ecosystem. What is that trend? And to me, the trend is a very simple one. It has to do with how we connect. And we have gone through 3 phases of those connectivity. We all know 1995, when one guy says, why can't we find stuff on the internet, and why can't we? Well, actually, the first one was Jeff Bezos, Amazon, who says, why can't we? How come we can't sell books online? And he created a technology called e-commerce and started with books. But there was the internet, the first wave, where basically we started to share information. One was books. The Google founders thought, how about finding stuff on the internet? That became a search engine as one of the successes. After that came social media. The mobile phone was another major technology that changed the way we connected. And now we are no longer just connecting information on the internet or doing business through selling books. Now we connected people. Social media, of course, is the biggest change there, and it's still today. But today, 2020. We are seeing not just 1 or 2 technologies. We are seeing a lot of technologies. You see them here, IoT, blockchain, and so forth, connecting everything. If you look at this in a chart, you can see here what is happening. And I think that we are only at the beginning. This is an exponential growth of connectivity. This is how we in India, in the US, and in Germany, where I'm from originally, can really connect in totally new ways. And if I were to be now at writing again the chapter on how to build brand, I would say, how do I leverage this connectivity? Because nothing has grown like this connectivity. Nothing has enabled global commerce. Nothing has enabled human connections globally in a way that this technology trend has done. Every other trend follows or encourages this. The cloud computing, edge computing, all of this has to do with connectivity. So that's where we need to focus from a building a business point of view. So now let me think where I think is the new stage of branding. I call it the era of shared value. We are no longer just creating brand value for customers. We need to think of a business that creates shared value for everyone. You're no longer just solving for a better car. You need to solve for mobility. And in order to solve for mobility, you can't do it alone. You need to do it with partners. I call them participants in an interaction field. If you really want to integrate in the life of consumers, you can't do it just by selling Charmin or by selling a particular product. You need to sell, you need to connect in a number of ways, and I'll show you a few examples. Now, I give you a few examples of this new era that I find so exciting, and then the principles. I'm asking you this. What is the company? There is one company and one brand that followed this approach and evolved their branding business and the way they build a company and the way they build a brand. And they evolved it. And their company has grown faster and is more valuable. Their stock price in the last 10 years has grown more than any other company on this planet, more than Apple, more than Amazon, more than Tesla, with the exception of one other company, namely Netflix. What's the company? What's that brand? Well, may I suggest you something? How about pizza? Yes, you heard me right. It is pizza. Most undifferentiated. Not a particular kind of pizza. Not a particular kind of flavor. Nothing special about the pizza. Yet that company has grown. It's called Domino's Pizza. I actually had my assistants look at that. This company called Domino's, their stock price in the last 10 years has appreciated more than anyone, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. And I think they have done it because they have not just, they have followed those brand building principles I'm talking about. And so I ask you, please think about your own brands and how you evolve those, because I think there are some interesting lessons. I have a few more examples. Let's think about how they did this. If you lived ever in the United States, hopefully you also have Domino's in India, but if you ever lived in the United States, you know how Domino's Pizza started. They said, we deliver a pizza in 30 minutes, and if you don't get it in time, then you get it for free. That was a value proposition. Fast and free deliveries. 30 minutes. I used to live in a dormitory when I arrived in the United States, and we played hide and seek with a delivery person because we knew if we were hiding long enough, after 30 minutes, we got a free pizza. That was a big deal for us back then. We didn't do it always, but I must say we tried it a few times. But there was a basic need, delivery, fast delivery. It's an era of logic. Then, of course, Domino's Pizza evolved. Next thing they did is they said, we also need to connect with students on, through their fun experiences in sports and entertainment when they don't study. March Madness is a good example. It's a basketball event in the United States where the colleges come together, the NCAA, the National Association of Athletic Association, all the college teams come together every year, and then they have a competition. It's called March Madness. It's like a big college event. So Domino's Pizza says we emotionalize pizza. We are not just about the delivery. We are also fun. We are supporting the athletes. That's an emotional connection. Like I was at Kansas at one point in time, University of Kansas, and Domino's Pizza was the choice because they also supported the basketball team, Jayhawks, they call them, one of the best teams, by the way. Next one was, they said, okay, we need to sort of like solve some problems. People don't like to anymore use the telephone. We now go into online and e-commerce, and that's a good thing to do. You digitize, you create a better experience, fast online. What Domino's Pizza has done is gone way beyond this now. Domino's Pizza now has figured out how to deliver the pizza. By the way, the pizza has improved, but it's not a good pizza. It's a okay pizza. It's a good pizza, not a great pizza, let's say. But what it has done is had figured out how you can order or how you get to a pizza in any way or form. I don't even have to touch anything anymore. All I open is, and I click on my thing and I say pizza. Domino Pizza delivers. I come home, I walk into my apartment and I say, Alexa, pizza. And she knows what kind of Domino's pizzas I normally order. I am with my son at a football field on Randall's Island. That's a little island where they play soccer. I'm a coach, like a parent coach. And all I have to say is Domino's Pizza. And guess what? With a drone, they deliver the pizza. So they made it the most fun and the most easy. And the funnest part of all is, in the moment I say Domino's Pizza, on my screen here, on my mobile phone, I see Frank, they call him Frank, to put the pizza in the oven. I see Jack is his name, to pick up the pizza at the store, and I see how he delivers to me and on Randall's Island puts it on the drone, and from there delivers it on the thing. Pizza's flying by. It is an absolute show. If you can drive to the island, or if it's a driving distance, there is actually a pizza mobile which has the oven, on inside the car, and it delivers it right from there. That's the show. The neighbor kids come around, and I have to always order 2 or 3 times. But that's how it works. You're not just sort of delivering an online experience. You deeply integrate yourselves in the daily life. So and all of it is technology. You know what's so interesting about the company? Of 800 people in this company, in headquarters in Chicago, of 800 people, 400 people are working on digital analytics and technology. 400 people figure out how to use those in the connectivity. How do you use the data from Erich, ordering pizza, so to optimize my delivery of my fancy pizza, let's say. So that's how it works. 400 of 800 people. Think of an average pizza company. What do you think you see? You see cooks. You see people inventing new pizza, new flavors, experiential kitchen. No, that's not the case. What you see is half of headquarters is digital technology, analytics, figuring out how to connect with me as a consumer. This is where we need to go. So I think what my major thesis is today is that we go from a world of walls, where we produce something in a factory and then deliver it to the customer, like BMW creates in the factory the ultimate driving machine, and then delivers it to you and me, to the customer or the dealer, and we buy it at a reasonably price. Usually it's too much, at least for my pocket. And branding is just one way of creating value along that value chain. And we compete in a world of worlds. I'm competing against Mercedes and Audi when I work with BMW. I compete with Domino in the world of worlds. You compete Domino's with Papa John's and several other pizza companies. That's the world of world. But this is the old world. This is the first, second, and third industrial revolution. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution. We still have to do the branding like we always do, sure. But I think the value creation, what we can do being in India, especially in the post-COVID world, where everything has accelerated, the world of webs has accelerated, we need to think of these interactions that exist between producers and consumers, many producers, as I will show you, and many consumers. That's the value creation. This is where branding fits. So here's my thesis. If you want to think about where branding has been for the last hundreds of years and where it is going now, it is going from old to new. And we still need to do the old, of course, but it gets a bit more complicated. So instead of just defining an image, now it is about leveraging data and technology, just like Domino's does it. Instead of branding being the one that gives you a veneer of emotionality, a veneer of self-expression, a veneer of protection relative to other brands, it's just a branding as a means of shaping perception. It's not what it's about. It's about creating, facilitating interactions, just the way Domino's has done. It's not about competition. It's not about disruption. I think that's that high testosterone type thinking. Everybody needs to disrupt everybody. We've got to be a little bit more conscious in this world of post-COVID. That's not the game. We don't have to disrupt everybody. That may be a nice thing for a workshop, but it is not a real worthy goal. In fact, in the world of connectivity, may I suggest, it's about collaboration, interaction, participation, and connection. So in the old days, you learn through repetition. Advertising, repetitive advertising. Coke is the real thing. 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 And in the end, we all believe that Coke is the real thing. And Pepsi is the young generation, and Pepsi is the young generation, and on and on. In the new world, it's about learning through actions. How did you learn about Google? How do you learn these days about anything? I learn through, somebody may say something to me, I learn through actions, I check it out, I'll download it, the app, it's all through interaction. In the old days, branding is about static. You do a branding job, you create a brand strategy, you decide on what you stand for, what you aspire to create, and then you say, done with this, now let's communicate. In the new world, it's a constant dynamic change. And I think this is important. We need a new model of branding. In the old days, the consumer was a target. In the old days, the consumer was on the receiving end of things. In the new world, the consumer is actually a participant. Now, I'm going through quickly. So, how does it even change the definition of branding? I think it does change. Here's how I would define a brand. A brand, as David Archer and I defined it years ago, is what you stand for and what you aspire to create in the long term. A branding is a strategic thing. It's not your logo and your designs and every beautiful things you create today. It's a set of ideas and values, themes, feelings, emotions that you define today that come from the inside, your identity, and that you aspire to create over time. Branding never happens in the short term. Branding happens over time, over 3 years, sometimes less, sometimes more. But that's what's branding. That's what the definition of branding is, the old definition. That is still valid today. But today, in this day and age, branding is also how you connect, how you interact, the kind of interactions you create with your customer and with everybody else. Not just with your customers, with other stakeholders. So I think we need to think of these two. It's almost like the front and the back of a coin. You can't have one without the other. You need both. You are wrong if you say the brand is the sum of the interactions. That's not what it is. That is what a UX or a digital person makes you believe. That's not right. What it is it's one part of the coin. The other part is what you stand for. But you cannot do one for the other because branding is no longer about communications alone. It's helpful. It's not the one that we build. Now, let me go through the rules. Some guidelines that I found really helpful at Vivaldi. I work at Vivaldi Group. We are consulting a brand agency, a consulting firm. And we do these things there. So the first thing is, you need to figure out how consumers become active participants. Consumers are not the recipients. And I give you an example here. Farmers is one of my examples in the beginning of the book, the John Deere examples. Do you know, what you see here is you see the 8R. It's a technological marvel. It's a $600,000 machine. You know how many farmers can afford this kind of top-of-the-line Rolls-Royce of a farming equipment? Very few. Add to that the service plans in order to actually fix all the electronics of this. But it's an amazing thing. It has processors on there. It has planned. It has code, software code, 6 millions of software code. It's like it has screens inside your thing. You can watch Netflix and all sorts of things. This is really cool. But do you really need this in order to waltz over your fields as a farmer? My opinion, maybe yes. In some cases, maybe yes. But that's the old branding. We have the best tractors. That's still important. But this is not how John Deere creates value today. Look here. Think about this. This is an emotional picture if you are a farmer. If you lumber down that field, whether you do it in India or you do it in the US, at 8 miles per hour, that's the top speed, 8 miles per hour. You have a hell of a boring job. I'm telling you. When you get some screens here into your cockpit, you can have some real fun. Think TikTok, think Fortnite, or just some serious business like on this one. It's emotional. I mean, you have some fun on the field, regardless where you are. Good fun. So that's important, but that's not what John Deere is all about. Let me tell you what John Deere is about. John Deere has figured out how 100,000 farmers 100,000 farmers participate in a platform and contribute their farm productivity data and share those data with John Deere. In a way, there is either through a drone or through the John Deere machine or other ways, you can actually leave sensors on the field, small, very, very inexpensive sensors. They measure everything you need about the soil. They measure how close the water is to the plant. They measure the health of the plant. They feed you daily data back how weather affects the plant. The farmers go even, conservative farmers even share their revenue, their profit numbers. So you know what happened to the field, you know how the farmer seeded and harvested the field, and you know how much money the farm made. John aggregates those data in the open data platform and then shares those data back with other farmers. Now, that to me is a really good thing, because now John Deere farmers can actually learn from each other. Why did it work in this field? Why does it work in Oklahoma and not in Kansas, let's say? And that's one thing. But John Deere aggregates many other data. But here's the trick. John Deere doesn't just serve farmers. This is not just about selling more John Deere equipment. They also invite a Monsanto, which is now called Bayer, is a German company that sells crops, and then they also invite fertilizer companies, and they invite university professors. They invite software companies, and they all look at the same data and says, how can we optimize the data? They share the data with the Department of Agriculture, who better funds certain activities and experiments that improve the productivity of the field. They actually share it, and this is the coolest thing, with companies who don't write, or farmers who don't write John Deere. So everybody benefits. So if your family is in the farming business in India, you can recall those data and can say, what do I learn in terms of increasing the productivity of the field? At the end, everybody benefits. This is what I mean shared value. When you think of branding, you need to figure out how the customer becomes an active participant and develops their trust. It's attracting the customer to become a participant. Here's how they view farmers on the field. So how is it in the old days? Consumer as a target. How is it now in the new case? Consumers become part of a value. The direct-to-consumer companies, DTC, basically do that already. Interactions, the kind of interactions you create, a daily sharing of farm productivity data, daily, hourly, whatever the sensors can do. Number two, the kind of data you get, not just data about how you shop, when you bought, when you the last time drove over the field with a John Deere. No, it's actual productivity data, or data that help productivity, soil condition, water irrigation, fertilizer usage. And what happens is, in the end of the day, you use less fertilizer than you normally have on the crop. You have more healthy food and so forth. Everybody benefits. Now that's number one. Number two, so let's think about it. You say it's so difficult. Farmers would never, ever share data. They are so conservative about these new things in technology, and John Deere was able to do that. That's the power of branding. Second, build an ecosystem, comprehensive interaction field. I mentioned it, I make it a quick point. This is the John Deere interaction field. There is in the core, I call it nucleus, it's how I describe it in the book. This is where value created, but everybody as well, ag tech companies, fertilizer companies, other farmer networks also benefit. And largely, most importantly, even farmers, I say it here in the bottom, farmers who work with non-Deere equipment. So this is not about, I compete against this company, Mahindra competes against. No, it's about actually sharing. It's about actually building something that helps all of us. This is where we need to think. We can't think anymore of product, service, and experience and pushing brand messages and slogans or purpose statements down to consumers' throat. It doesn't work anymore. It's an important thing to do, but it's not the thing that drives value. So how do we create value through branding? Through an interaction system, through inviting participants to engage with others, not to compete with others. Data and analytics drive these interactions and what we solve for. Number three, I should go quickly, create interactivity. You know, when you think about cameras, they are sort of the big camera companies like Sony, Canon, Ricoh. They are the best companies, Samsung. But they compete with one company that actually has 45% of a share of a part of the market. And whatever these companies do, whatever they brand, the Canons, the Samsungs of the world, the Apples of the world, they cannot win market share from this one company. What's the company? You guess it. It's GoPro. GoPro was started by somebody who had no clue about cameras. All he was obsessed is getting a really good shot when he's on a surfboard. He had no money. He actually failed in a company miserably and lost a lot of money, including his family, friend, and fool's money. But he built the GoPro camera. First, subcontracted from China and things like that, or Japan, but then it's built over time. It's one of the wealthiest men in the world. Actually, one of the first billionaires under 30 when he went public. What GoPro does so well is not the camera itself. If it were to be this camera versus that camera, what they would have is just another camera, and probably Apple, Samsung, Ricoh, Canon, any of those camera companies would have already put them out of business or bought them, something like that. But the way they build their brand is not through the camera itself. What they do is if you are a GoPro owner and you're on a surfboard and you make some pictures that morning, like from 6 or 8 o'clock in the morning, think about Pacific Ocean. I would think of California in my case. I think you have some good spot in Goa down there. I was there once. A wonderful trip. So think about there. You be there, you make some really good pictures. In the moment you come back with your GoPro camera and you get close to a Wi-Fi connection, the GoPro automatically uploads your whatever you created, and it automatically cleans the good shots from the bad shots. It's a technology they have developed. And then what it automatically does is, while you get your coffee at the surf shop, let's say, you can flip through the best pictures, the best shots, and you can actually, with a press of a button, you can post it online on the GoPro channel, on the YouTube channel, and every other channel you possibly can. So while you are drinking your coffee, your friends who sit in the office, or going on a train or a commuter train back to the office, they see you on the mobile phone and say, "Hell, Erich, he's got fun. They think about why they don't do what I do, and actually they go, as you imagine, they go to the office, they do their work, but over the weekend they find themselves to a store and buy a GoPro themselves and envy other surfers, if you will. It's what we call a virtuous cycle. Branding here is not about the camera, the features of the camera, the emotional benefits of owning a camera, and the branding is about how you connect with other people that are also surfing, or they're windsurfing or snowboarding or what they may do, and to have fun in their lives, and share with them a bit of this part of your life that is very memorable to you, that you like to share, like you do it on LinkedIn or Facebook. But it's about these videos, and because everything is branded GoPro, everybody says gotta have a GoPro to make that work. So it's about the connectivity, the interactivity that is created. Why is that so important? Because when you think of the brand of GoPro, the product here is not the GoPro camera. The product is the network. It's that the sharing of people, like-minded people, sharing valuable shots of how they do certain stunts on a half pipe, let's say, on a snowboarding, let's say. So the product actually gets better the more people like me or like others, like-minded people share. The more consumers share, the more the product gets better. That's what's called a network effect. We didn't have a network effect before connectivity. This is the new value creation. The old value creation was a better product. The new value creation is network effect. That's what we call network effect. There's a learning effect. GoPro has become incredibly good at finding the best pictures. You don't have to go anymore through hours of your tapes or your videos in order to see what's good. They actually have the capability to do that. The product again gets better. The brand is actually better because you have it. And of course the viral effect that I just told you, sort of like how everybody sort of like sees. This one was shot with GoPro. Try it on YouTube. One of the most engaging channels on the internet is what? Guess what? Number one, Lego. Number two is a client of us. Number two, GoPro. That's so powerful. Real engagement by consumers. So how do you create value? Direct relationship, data analytics and technology, and data from customers. Yeah. So now, finally, personalization. Now, here's the thing. Everybody knows that retail is in real trouble, and everybody knows that the number one retailer in the world, the best retailer in terms of revenue per square foot, the best retailer is Apple. You know, they have these towers of celebration, this worshipping of Apple fanboys or fangirls, let's say. They have the most amazing design. They have the coolest people working in the store for nothing. I hope they get paid well. They have these devices that are incredible things to own. You must own the next version of an iPhone. They have a revenue model for their stores. They make more money than anybody else in the world, except for one brand, a new brand in China. The brand is called Hema. You'd be surprised. Apple makes on the average $5,500 per square foot. The average retail store makes $325 per hour, per square foot. A store like, let's say, a Ralph Lauren store in the pre-COVID era made about 2,000, maybe 3,000. You know, Ralph Lauren, you pay an $80 shirt. It's a little on the pricey side here, Madison Avenue here in New York City. But the average store is 300. So Apple is by far, with their electronics, with the success of the iPhone and the iWatch, it's by far the most successful. In the retailing, obviously, they have set the standards, except for Hema. Here's Hema. Hema makes 7,300. And you know what? It's a grocery store. Hey, how about that? And you know what? Apple stores have closed. Many Apple stores have closed in the COVID era. Hema is still open. Oh, guess what? Apple stores have suffered also in COVID. Hema has not suffered. In fact, Hema has grown significantly more. So I think what happens here, and I think they have done branding super well. So from a standard digital connectivity perspective, it doesn't really look that fancy. It's a fully integrated offline, online. We call it omni-channel, supply chain, logistics, payment, delivery, nothing new. If you look at things, yeah, they personalize certain things, like they can tell you what you bought last time, so they tell you now this time. It's really nothing special about it. But here's what's so special: what they really have created. There are about 100 stores now, 150 stores. Actually, changes by the month. 150 stores now in China, distributed. What is so interesting is they have connected the farm with the store and seamlessly connected how you shop in the store and how you learn about the products, how you order, and how it is delivered to your home. You cannot go inside a store without an iPhone or a mobile phone in general, because everything, purchase, the payment, how you learn about the product is done via the mobile phone. If you are in the office in Shanghai, you will say, I'm going to have dinner tonight at home, and on the way I'm going to buy a fresh fish. You click the button, you see the fish literally swimming. Not really swimming, but it's almost like a mobile phone. It looks like that from the fish farm toward the store. It's timed so that when the fish arrives, when you arrive at the store, you enter the store, access to the store with your mobile phone. The fish comes up, has a code. You can see what kind of fish it is, how long it was on the way, who is the farmer. You can see all the information. You can also choose various options of preparation. There are certain people who preparation. The fish comes down, is actually overhead, comes down to a person and actually prepares that food for you. You put it in your bag and you take it home. You can also have it delivered within 30 minutes. It's a fully integrated system. Remember what I said earlier? How do you integrate in the life of consumers? The throughput in this store, the number of fish, it's called Hema, means fresh, so fresh food. The number of store that goes through, it's gigantic, it's enormous. It's a massive logistics operation. But that's how they make. That's why they have so high revenue per square foot. So think about it. In China, at least, the number one need, the number one thing that matters to consumers is freshness in food. That's a big thing, freshness. And Hema solved this interactivity and created an interaction field from the farm to your table. That manage this and optimizes it in a way over your mobile phone in such a way that it becomes the biggest success. That's what I mean by branding. That's what I mean by integrating in your daily life. It's not that I need to go to buy grocery. It's, you get the story. So personalize, not just personalize and sort of trying to sell me more lipstick because you have know what the lipstick I bought last. By the way, I didn't buy it for myself, just so you know. But no, that's the kind of personalization you get often. But think about how you personalize, how you use data, how do you connect. And by the way, in the case of Hema, when I live in China, they have everything. They know everything I buy in terms of fresh food. I know exactly. They fully build a data system and interaction field so that they can serve me, not sell to me, but serve me. I think this is where branding has to go. So those are the things. So let's think about old branding. We have all these great concepts: relevance, differentiation, purpose, meaning, love, branding, remember, emotionalization. All of those are good things. But do you really create the next wave? Do you really can stand out by following what everybody else does? Do you really create a brand by being more relevant? Wasn't that always relevant? Wasn't relevance already something that David Archer 30 years ago wrote in the book? Wasn't it already that Rees and Rees talked about it back in the 70s when they talked about positioning? Purpose isn't new either. It's just newly dished up. Meaning, always, of course, love. Yeah, I am totally in love. That's old branding. New branding is thinking about an interaction field. We all live in an interaction field. And actually, I may venture in the 1,400 minutes that we'll all live from midnight to midnight, more or less, we all live in the same interaction field. I bet you do what I do. I wake up and I look at my mobile phone. I check a few things and on and on and on. Very similar, whether you're in India or whether you're in the US or in Germany. So think about this interactivity. How can we build a new brand building model that leverage these network effects, that makes consumers participants, that doesn't create viral effect by having a funny video on TikTok that sort of gets liked or on Facebook, but actually real viral effect. Think of GoPro as an example. Think how GoPro perfected your video experience. You can have fun on the surfboat before you have to look at long-winded videos that most of them you hate anyway. So I want to stop here. I know I have just exceeded my time to speak. I am incredibly excited that I was able to talk to you, and I hope you have some questions for me, and I hope this was a way to think about how we compete in the post-COVID-19 world, and how we need to build brands, and how we need to build a business, a platform business, an interaction field, so that we are not just communicating a purpose, communicating a position, but we actually also delivering it. There is nothing more wasteful than to communicate an empty promise. So we need to build the business model together, what I call an interaction field model, together with brand building, and then we really create the next stage for India and in the Indian economy.
Well, thank you, Eric. I didn't want the session to end. Let me be very frank and honest with you. I wish we had more time, and it's absolutely fabulous in the way you articulated the whole story. I think the way you define era of logic, emotion, experience, and shared value, it's absolutely superb, and I'm sure our audience have
Thank
loved
you,
it as much as
Rakesh.
I have listening to
Yeah,
you. I'll
I
pick
got
it up
excited about
from
it.
yeah, Eric. I'll pick it up from where you just ended. So there is this whole new dimension to branding that you just introduced
Mhm.
to all of us. So amidst this whole ecosystem model, which is a lot to do with the science than the art, it's about business, it's about business modeling, it's about partnerships, technology, data, and everything. So amidst all of this, what happened to getting into the heart of customers with endearing storytelling? So is marketing and branding as we knew it then dying? And what should marketers be doing if indeed that is the writing on the wall?
Yeah, I feel like we in marketing have lived way too much of a creative brief, or we live off the assignment, the project description of the CMO. Who says, look, my colleagues here in the C-suite have done some work on, there's a new product coming out. We think this is more or less the target market, but we expect that you can qualify this. We expect you to create us a brand, and we want to know how much the budget would be for this. And we have an agency that then will help us to communicate this, let's say, or it's that kind of work I think that we as marketers really need to rethink, because I don't think, because here's why. If one thing has changed in the last years is that we used to create value on the supply side. It's called supply side economies of scale. That's what Michael Porter at Harvard said is the competitive advantage, supply side economies of scale. And that has now changed. We now create demand side economies of scale. Amazon is not a supply side business. Amazon is a demand side business. Domino's is not a supply side business. It's not about the pizza. It's not about the pizza. Sounds funny. It's about the consumer and the connection with the consumer. So I think we as marketers need to see value is no longer created on supply side. It's just you don't create value through another optimization of the value chain of BMW. You don't create value by making your whatever, your sunroof a little bit more fancier. That's still important. Technology evolves and there will be a better sunroof. But the answers that we really as consumers ask ourselves today is not about a better BMW. In fact, it's about how do we get to mobility? How do we in a post-corona world solve for this? Now, storytelling, yes, it does have its place. Yes, we are going to do that. But is that where value creation is? Storytelling works on the demand side and the supply side. But I think that rather than, I personally, storytelling, I'd rather leave this to my children in the evening.
Yeah, that's a good one. Erich, speaking of
I'm trying
Domino's,
to make a point. I don't really take it. That was just, it's not.
You did make a point there.
Real valuable storytelling, yeah.
Yes. So Erich, I'm just baffled. Speaking of Domino's, just baffled the way Domino's, as you mentioned, made the product irrelevant, right? Just a pizza and not even the best quality one. Though my son would not agree with me, he'll violently disagree. But we know
I like your son.
the fact.
He's the future, Rakesh. He's the future. He knows.
Can't argue with that. but it could have been a burger, it could have been a taco, or it could have been a vada pav in India. So what really worked from a consumer standpoint, right? Consumers can differentiate between a good product or a bad product, but what was it that really worked for them? And this is a question that one of our audience also has. Rajat wants to know that there are a lot of companies who are competing in the space. They have access to the same technology, capital, data, people. Yeah. What stops them from replicating this then? What is it that we're missing here?
Oh, this is a very good question, because really there is a lot of discussion. There is 170 meal kit solutions in the US right now competing. Blue Apron is 170 more. There are 150 mattress companies selling mattresses online, just like Casper. So yeah, you can easily duplicate that. And if you look at, there was a study I just read by Boston Consulting Group of I think 67%, almost 70% of all concepts never fail, never really get implemented of these ideas. So and many get implemented and then they die off because they run out of funding. The reason why is in my opinion is there are 4 parts to making this work. Number 1, you need to have the right framing. You need to frame your problem right. Is your problem to begin with? Are you solving a problem of better car or mobility? So that's a good example, maybe an example. Most people don't understand that. Marketers are best equipped to understand it. We are studying right now the gifting world for a company that is a huge company, billions of dollars. But we look and re-look at what is gifting in America in this case. And then once we structure that, we call it demand landscaping. And most people just say like, oh, there's a mattress company. We can do that mattress company better. Oh, there's a meal kit solution. The meal kit solution, let's have healthy meal kit solution and you have healthy fresh and so forth and so forth. So framing from the consumer perspective, that's number 1. Framing a really demand, because it's a demand side effects. This is where value is created. So measure demand, not a consumer insight. That's good for advertising. I mean demand, really structuring the demand. I wrote that in my last book, Hidden in Plain Sight, the whole methodology. Number 2, you need to build a model, a branding model and a business model. And there are 3 pieces to that. Number one, it is the interactions that you create. What's the interaction? The farmers. What is the data they give back? How often they give the data back? That's interactions. You need to design interactions. Number two, you need to measure an architecture. And number three, you need to create a governance. How do you share? Who gets the money? How do you share out? Not only how you extract money or value, how do you share? That's the designing part. Framing, then designing. And the third part is the building part. You need to figure out how to create gravitational pull. And this is why marketing and branding becomes so important, because the gravitational pull, meaning how do you get customers? Most direct to consumer companies today, they say, oh, we have investor capital, we target performance marketing, direct marketing, we create cost CAC, cost of acquisition. That's not working. That is actually how companies get spend investor money. You've got to figure out how do you become an attraction model. It's about attraction. It's not about pushing. It's about attraction. It's about pull. In my book, I have actually 6 factors, and if we had time now, I would go through all 6 of those. But I also will give you, there's in our website, www.vivaldigroup.com, you can find an article of mine that talks about those 6 factors. And this is where branding comes in. Most builders of these models these days don't have that third part neither the first part, framing and building. They all focus on designing the model. And I think this is where it goes wrong.
Thank you, Erich. It was very interesting. And our audience heard, speaking of attraction, you know where to find more material if you want to delve into what Erich just mentioned more. Erich, there is, again, on the topic of attraction, Anu, one of our viewers, is saying, Erich, your energy is infectious.
Thank you.
I did warn our audience. I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Big shout out to our audience. We got lots of questions coming in, guys. Keep your questions coming in. We have still some time with Erich. I hope I can answer ask all your questions. But the 2 lucky questions at the end of the show will be declared the winners. Okay, the next question, Erich,
can
is
I
from.
ask my own question? I win the prize.
You have a free pass, Erich. Domino's. We'll send you Domino's coupon.
There we go. They are flying here.
We got the next question is from Jesse Paul. Erich, and Jesse is the ex-CMO of 2 the largest tech companies in India, Wipro. She's the ex-CMO of Wipro and Infosys, and she wants to know that if a brand has invested in its brand in the past, can it take a break of communications of say 12 months and not have sales impact due to cash constraints? If the brand is taking a break for 12 months, is it an advisable thing for brands to do?
I think that I have seen this happening. There are exceptional cases. When you restage a brand in 2014, when Adidas restaged the brand, the Stan Smith brand model, I don't think you can stop communicating as a company if you're Wipro or a company like that. I think yes, you can also stop eating, but you know what happens if you do stop eat. And I think it's like biting in your own hand, and you know what that means too. It hurts, instantly. So I don't think that decision can be lightly. I think it is incredibly difficult to maintain advertising budgets, communication budget, but it's a fool's game. It's a fool's game. There is only fools compete on price and product. Winners find a lasting value to create a lasting way to create value, and that is about investing in the brand. You can't stop communication. It's fool's gold. It's fool's gold.
Fair enough. Clear message there, Eric. The next question that I have is from Ritesh, and I'm gonna join this question with Ramneet's question. So Ritesh and Ramneet, they want to ask similar question, which is as follows: that if competing companies become a part of ecosystem, as you had suggested as well, and they stop competing, will customers not lose eventually? For example, if Amazon, Google, and Facebook were to collaborate, they will create such high entry barriers that nobody will be able to break. And how can that be good for customers?
That is a very good example, but I can give you a good example. It's also written up in my book. The company is called Flatiron. Flatiron, about 1.8 million patients who are diagnosed with cancer share the data, their treatment data in their hospitals. They share all the most intricate health data, 1.8 million. That's about 10% or to 15% of all Americans diagnosed every year, about 20 million Americans with cancer, all forms of cancer. Flatiron aggregates those data and has built now an interaction field, an ecosystem. One of the participants is Pfizer, has a drug called Avastin in order to solve various cancer conditions for you. And guess what? The owner of Flatiron is actually Roche, which has a competing drug. And by collaborating, they have now found that they can treat certain cancers by actually using a combination of the drugs. And I think when you are on an 18 months timeline to survive, and you have a chance of getting a drug that actually works in a combination drugs, that's a good thing. So yes, the question is a good one. There are situations where the consumer loses. I think this is what I call in my model framework, designing the governance part. You need to solve that governance part properly. Otherwise, only one person wins. Look at Amazon. Who is the richest man in the world? Yes, it's Jeff Bezos. Who is the richest man in the world, even after a divorce? Still Jeff Bezos. Something is wrong right there, right? So I think that cannot be the way. But Flatiron, and you read my book, when you really build an interaction field with a proper governance, then competing pharmaceutical companies actually combine. And you know what's the greatest thing about that case study? There are many cancer conditions where in the past they diagnose you, they put you on some drugs, and you are vegetable right after therapy. And now actually they found that in many cases they don't need a drug at all. They just need another eating therapy, let's say, or wellness therapy. And you can live with a cancer condition. So I think we need to think of not value creation about how much drugs can we sell to the hospital or to the doctor, but value creation, a shared value creation model for everyone. That's brand building 2020.
Superb, Eric. I've got a time check from Ashish. I wanted to check with you. Do I have time for us for another 2-3 questions? I want to be cognizant of your time.
I have plenty of time.
Okay, super. Thanks. The audience would love that.
Yeah.
So, Eric, this next question I think is from. There are 2-3 questions of similar nature, so I'm just going to combine those, and I suspect these are from business owners and entrepreneurs, essentially. So one is from Anish, other is from Manmohan. I think the question that they want to ask is, online is going to see a big shift. Ecosystems will consume independent businesses as they continue to grow and expand. What about businesses who want to remain brick and mortar, especially the small businesses? What should they be doing to stay relevant and continue to grow their business?
Yeah.
Also, Anish wants to know that for these small businesses, given the markets are still fragmented, what would be the payback on brand building in such situation if they were to start investing?
Yeah, I in my book, in chapter 3, I talk about Alibaba, in China relative and compare it to Amazon and some other business models. And what I find interesting is that the Amazon model is one of disruption, putting stores out of business. Uh, uh, which they have done very successfully when you look at booksellers and many other categories. And they go from one category to the other category to put out businesses and push people to buy online, more convenience, and run their Federal Express, own personal Federal Express operation. So you have your groceries within the hour and you don't really need to go to the stores anymore. The Alibaba model is just the opposite. Alibaba actually has grown the retail business. They have actually, if you are a very, very small retailer, they give away for free a technology in order to manage your inventory and to better optimize the retail. In China, everything is very local. You're a small retailer serving a local community. There was no payment system 10 years ago. There was no logistics operation to sell something across China. And so Alibaba has said, look, that doesn't make any sense because a local retailer, a smaller shop should be able to do that. So what they do is they give you that software for free. They hook you up on the Alibaba system, even Taobao, which is the global mall. You can trade like Yves Saint Laurent and sort of the global brands, Hugo Boss and things like that. But even so, if you have a local shop and you in your local area, you have a product that may have some demand across China. So Alibaba enables that. So when I look at the landscape, the retail landscape in China, because the retail landscape has not really matured and developed, and there's a lot of learning that has to go on, and the systems have to place. Alibaba actually builds a system, actually enables the retailers, even giving the software for free. At the moment you get to a certain level of sales, then you can get at a higher level Alibaba, the cloud solution from Alibaba that gives you more capabilities. But they are actually growing with that free software. They are growing. I think it's like 1.6 million retailers now have adopted that software. And so Alibaba actually is a good model. There's a book out there which I read by the chief strategy officer. I think that's one of the best books that explains it. It's called Smart Business. It's a book by the chief strategy officer who's been there for 20 years or 18 years and has seen that evolution. So it is possible to survive in an ecosystem world. I think, and we also have seen this here in the United States. One of our partners at Vivaldi, senior partners, has done a lot of consulting work with Target, and Target is thriving right now in that new retail world. So there are significant advantages. There's a presentation that I can share if you want, where I talked about what a retailer can do in that context of, let's say, Alibaba or Amazon and other online successes.
Great, thank you, Eric. That would be super. We can share that presentation with our audience. We can put it on our social pages for people to see. I think there are a lot of our audience who joined us who are entrepreneurs or who are in retail business as well. Okay, so the next question is from Zoel, and he wants to know more about B2B businesses, Eric. He wants to know that have you seen any examples of B2B businesses creating network effect or a platform effect that you spoke of?
Yes, thank you for asking, because I can again mention my book. It's coming out September 15. I must have selected the right case studies. I got fascinated by this German company called Klöckner. It's a metal trader. You know, metal trading is very, very backward, let's say. They don't really use email. They use fax and telephone. In 2018, let's say. They come from this rural town called Duisburg, which is like the coal mining area for the former coal mining area. It's the middle of nowhere. And the company is not very big. They are not like the Mistral, the Salzgitter and the big metal companies. They're very small relatively. And this metal trader says, we got to do something. We got to build. We need to get. We need to. We need to digitize. And what they did is the CEO was a young person and a salesperson from that sells normally these things, telephone, with a lot of paper and things like that, negotiating, price negotiating, and that kind of literally, it's like literally in the old ways, the way we think about in the old ways of trading. And he went to Berlin, which is the major capital in Germany, and there he came together with two other persons, and for 4 weeks they huddled together and says, how can we take the first steps to get at least our customers to think about the business differently. And they created a little portal at first, a little website type thing where they put some of the commodity steel on there and says, look, these are the prices. It's crazy enough. Prices are negotiated, but let's put a price on it. But let's just put it up there. And they did that. And then they put more of that. Then they have 200,000 customers, so small customers and also large ones. And they all put them up. They invited all of those customers because they built that system with a salesperson. The salesperson wasn't competing with a digital solution. The salesperson actually says, hell, I don't have to sell the commodity stuff. I don't always have to negotiate and haggle the price. And slowly, the customer starting adopting it. There was a lot of reluctance. Competitors said, you're crazy. You're destroying our business. We cannot negotiate anymore. And they said, well, at the end of that, all of us will be better off. It turns out now, several years later, 2-3 years later, they have now a platform, a business, an interaction field developed called XOM, XOM. And they show, and everybody trades. Even competitors are now trading on their platform. And the business has substantially increased. The company won a prize, for one of the best innovations in Germany. So what I like so much about thinking about interaction fields, digital ecosystems, you don't have to have the sophistication. Now, I just sort of like to the timeline. 1 month they thought like, look, does that any make sense? The CEO huddling, over card boxes and in not a nice office. That's really like a really bad part of town in Berlin, huddling over the idea. Then after 1 month, they said, look, we could actually gobble something together based on existing software. We don't really need to create anything. We just code these things. And in 3 months, they launched it with the customers. They started it with their own customers. They built this out with customers. And then they introduced it to the market in general. So I think it is, and they replaced fax and telephone. They also have now shifted more to high margin businesses, high margin steel with the salespeople. So salespeople actually, and then what they did is they said, how do we bring the entire organization back in Duisburg? How do we teach them? So they also developed a learning institute where from that success in Duisburg, the people who never get out of their town or that region and don't know really about digitalization, they are now sort of like learning this. So it's a wonderful example. The company is called Klöckner, Kloeckner, and look it up. It's a really great story. Also, what you can see is online on their website, they detailed that evolution in a step-by-step. This is what we did first. And so you can learn from that as a practical example in the B2B space. And please read my book or buy my book.
You just stole my thunder, Eric. It's just about, you heard Eric saying that. I can't wait for the book to come out. I hope, Eric, it's going to be available all over the world, especially in India. And I'm sure a lot of our audience, after listening to your session, and the ones who would listen to it going forward, would love to lay their hands on the book as and when it comes out.
You have the website. You have the website. So if it's not available in India, we go in business and we create an interaction field between my office and India.
Yeah,
We go in the
that's a
book
good one.
business, and then we disrupt Amazon. Give it back to them.
I'm sure my CTO who's just joined us, Baiju, he would love to do that. Baiju is giving his regards and saying it's been a privilege listening to you, Eric, today.
Thank
So
you.
yes, Baiju, thank you very much for joining in, and yes, it's a privilege to hear Eric. So Eric, last two questions. This one I saved to ask in the end. It's a short question. Please don't ask me to elaborate because that is the question that will come to you because the question is coming from David Acker.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a tough one. I can't answer that one.
yeah.
He's
So
been my
if you
my
ask me to
mentor, my
explain,
teacher.
if you ask me to explain, you know my answer. So David wants you to tell us what is the customer sweet spot and how is that relevant today?
Oh, I love you, David. I love you. David is the most wonderful person. The customer sweet spot is chapter 8. I cry. If you see my eyes, I cry. It's so beautiful. The customer sweet spot is this one thing that we created, and when we wrote the last book, the book in the brand leadership book, and chapter 8, and we discussed that concept. And when you think of what I said, what I was talking about, the the framing of that brand, of the brand building model that you need to adopt in the world of connectivity, the business model, the interaction field, as I write in my book. And when you do that framing, we do right now in the gifting world, we do 20,000 consumers, structuring demand. But in the end, you need to get to that customer sweet spot, this one thing that drives the interaction field, that drives the interactions, that drives the architecture and the governance, the value creation. And that's what the customer sweet spot is about. This one piece that brings it together, that drives your entire value creation in the supply side, and most importantly on the demand side. From a consumer perspective, that's what you need to figure out. I'm so glad that David has had that question. Thank you.
I knew for a fact that there is a history and chemistry behind this question. So thank you for that
That
answer.
is so good. He's so good. David is the
Eric,
most amazing man you can imagine.
he's,
Yeah,
he was just absolutely spectacular as you are, Eric, on today's session.
yeah.
So, Eric, just a last question before I draw the curtains, given the time that we have, Eric. So, it's an open question. Is that what advice would you want to give to people who are listening to us who are in their middle level management roles or who started their career a couple of years back? What is your advice to them? How should they go about building their roles and building their careers?
So
Prepares them for the next era.
I think that one thing that what is most important is that my experience has been that we talk a lot about these technologies, and we talk a lot about the latest technologies and things. And in every industry, there are sort of specific technologies like autonomous driving, and there are certain laser technologies in automotive. And so it's sort of a technology overload. But I think that that technology actually does not drive the value anymore. Now it's important, like there is like in building platforms and ecosystem, it's important. APIs are important technology that connects various systems. But I have found is that applying some of those principles of how you frame the demand landscape and the demand. I think that some of these principles are incredibly powerful in this new world, because technology is in terms of value creation, is taking that backstage. And what really creates value is figuring out how to connect with consumers. So I think that if I were in the middle stages of a career, I would embrace the changes in technology, but I also would make sure that technology becomes an enabler of value creation. And I think that's what a manager can do at the best, namely orchestrate. Like that's sort of what's sort of the key part. Remember, if you want to build an ecosystem, if you want to build an interaction field, if you want to leverage connectivity, it's not about owning assets. It's not about dominating assets. It's about financial assets thrown toward a business. It's about orchestrating. It's about connecting. At MIT, Marshall van Alstein calls it the inverted firm. That namely value creation is not inside the firm, it's outside of the firm. And and so as a manager, who is doing that orchestration? It's not the startup. The startup has a different thing to worry about. It's a manager in a company that knows how to orchestrate, and that requires a certain level of experience and a certain level of ability to lead and manage a network. And I think this is the value, where the value lies. And therefore, I think let's not get distracted by the technology question. Let's look at where value is created, and that's orchestrating on the demand side.
Wow, fabulous, Eric. I can't thank you enough for today's session. It is absolutely spectacular. I loved
Thank you.
every single moment of it, hosting it, listening to you, and I'm sure all our audience out there thoroughly enjoyed it as well. Going by
Rakesh,
the questions and
invite me
yes,
to India. I am still here in
you
my living room. This is my, you know, you know. Invite me to India.
Eric,
I'll
you
take
have an open invitation, Eric. Open invitation. I think though the day we resume normalcy, right? You can book a flight and come to India
There we
anytime. It
go.
will be a
There we go.
pleasure to have you with us over here. And I'm sure you've created a fan following for yourself. Lots of people may want to listen to you again and have this conversation
My
in
last
person.
trip, this year was to New Delhi this year.
Oh,
So was my last trip, and ever since I was in this beautiful hotel in Gorgion, the part of in this beautiful hotel, and it's a lot more fun to be around you guys than to be in my living room,
no, I
especially
can.
after the COVID, the lockdown.
So we share the same sentiment, Rick. I am in Gurgaon as I speak to you right now.
Oh,
So yeah,
super.
it's a shame that we can't step out. But I hope this. I'm sure this shall pass too, and it shall pass soon, and we all will be able to gather together and meet each other physically and have these interactions and carry on the conversation that we've had today, Eric. So thank you very much, Eric, for joining us today. Just
Thank
lovely
you.
to have you with us. It's time for me to pick up two lucky questions, and those two questions would be Zoel, who asked the question on B2B network effect for the last question that I posted to Eric. And the second question is from Anish, who wanted to know about how should smaller companies really compete in this ecosystem world that Eric just spoke about.
It's an important question.
Congratulations, guys. Please send us your email IDs so we can ship the vouchers to you. We don't want to keep it to us. We want you to enjoy it for the time investment that you had in asking these questions. So thank you very much, Eric, for joining us.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you with us, and I hope to continue our conversation and be in touch with you.
And if you have no
Look
claims
forward.
on the gift, please send it to me.
Absolutely, and we can't wait for your book to come, Eric.
Yep, very good. So thank you so
Wish you
much.
all the best, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Most pleasure. Most pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of a very exciting session. As I said, I totally enjoyed it. I hope you all out there gained a lot. I think there was so much to learn from what Eric told us and the presentation that he made. I have, as always, our partners to thank before I wind up the session for today. Um, Big thank you to our knowledge partner, etbrandequity.com. This is our first association today. Thank you very much, team etbrandequity.com, for supporting us in this initiative. And as always, thank you very much to all our community support partners, Resulticks, Adgully, Netcore, AllWriter. Thank you very much for being with us and helping us spread the message. Guys, the next session, if you thought this is gotten big, the next session that we have next Friday is on 17th July, 6 p.m. with the legendary Tom Peters. Yes, you heard it right, Tom Peters. He's going to be with us, with me in conversation. It's going to be an interview, and I just can't wait for the next Friday to come. And I'm sure you guys will clued on. Please mark it in your calendar. Follow us. Make sure that you're there, joining us, listening to Tom Peters, and asking your questions. Have a good day. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much.